Good evening. Welcome to Larry Rinker Golf Live. I'm pleased to be joined tonight by top 100 teacher Kellie Stenzel. How you doing, Kellie?
Hey, Larry, I'm good. I'm great tonight. Excited to be with you and talk a little golf. It's always fun.
Well, thanks. And I'd like to, Larry Rinker Golf Live is on Facebook Thursday night, 7:30 to 8. I've got a new book out, The Journeyman. It's now in paperback. You can pick that up at larryrinker.com. And I also have it digitally as well. And Kellie, if you would like to find out more about Kellie, you can go to kelliestenzelgolf.com. So Kellie, you've been busy. You're doing a lot of work with Golf Magazine. You got to spend the summer in Wyoming this summer at Shooting Star. That had to be a lot of fun to get out west.
Yes, it was. We were lucky. I was scheduled to go there, and then because of COVID, got canceled. And it was like, I'm pretty level and don't get too upset, but I was really disappointed. So when Wes called me, the head pro from out there, and said, well, maybe we can do something if we can kind of reinvent your schedule. And I like almost jumped through the phone. I'm like, yes. I'm like, I'd love to come, and I'll come whenever you want. And my son and I spent basically 2 months out west. I spent a month teaching there. The club is fabulous. The members are great. And I was super busy. So it was terrific. And as you mentioned, doing a lot of work with Golf Magazine and golf.com. And certainly both have been beneficiaries of that. Golf feels like a safe place for people to be. We've been very happy with what we've seen.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of women that maybe played around with it, but they're getting a little more serious about their golf game, aren't they?
I think we've seen really a flux to golf in general, but I think women in particular, it was kind of an excuse where, now there's time.
Right.
The thing that always I think scares women away from golf is there's so much to do and there's so many responsibilities and they don't have time. Well, now one of the things that we did have was time,
Right.
and they got in there, and a lot of them, I think they were happy to see that they could do it, and it was fun and it was wonderful outdoor time and maybe even family time. So huge numbers of women getting into the game.
And I think the family time is what really turns a lot of the ladies on, to get out there and get to play with their husbands or their friends or their family. And I definitely saw a lot of ladies at Red Sky this summer. And like you said, time, that was something we all had. I'd never written the book if it wasn't for COVID. I had the time to do it. But you've got a couple videos now out on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so
And
what's fun is they're free. So I had filmed these previously. They're for women. One is a full swing video, kind of how to set up, how to hold it, how to get the ball into the air, what the clubs do. And then the second is a short game video, and really keeping in mind that women are a little different and very specific content to them. Not that the men couldn't watch it, they can and they do. But I had previously housed these elsewhere where people had to buy them, and I don't have the time or the wherewithal to want to market them. So I said, you know what? Let me just put them somewhere where they're free if you're an Amazon Prime member, and that I can say to a student after a lesson, you know what? Go on to Amazon Prime and you can see I did it all. It's not the most perfect editing, but I'm proud of it. And I can say, hey, listen, go on and you'll see some kind of follow-up to what your lesson was, and it'll put it a little more in context. So it's been really fun. I've had like people reach out to me that don't even know and say, hey, I watched your videos and they really helped. So that's always been a real thrill to me when I hear from people and they're like, hey, you helped me, but yet I've never actually met them in person.
well, I think a lot of us do videos, and really our goal is to help people. And
Yes.
my first two books, which are ebooks, they were really designed for follow-up after a lesson. I don't know about you, Kellie, but when I would take a lesson, I would write down my notes after the lesson. If I didn't do that, I might have remembered 20% of it. So I was a pretty meticulous note taker, but the ability of video and V1 and then to put your own material out there, that when somebody takes a lesson, now they might have a 70-80% retention rate. That's big.
Well, and it's hard, like if you're taking an actual in-person lesson, it's hard to remember everything. Like you might be able to remember one or two things. So writing it down is huge, but also like being able to go back and reference it, and like some of the terminology with golf is just so confusing. Like, what's the difference between a chip and a pitch? And
Right.
what's the difference between a gap wedge and a sand wedge and a lob wedge and a pitching wedge? It's so confusing. So to be able to take your time and digest it in these two videos in particular, I feel are very comprehensive, but very super simple. That's kind of the way I communicate.
Right.
So to be able to go back and take your time and digest it at your own speed I've been happy to be able to share it with my students and others that I don't even know.
Well, I think the simpler we can make it, the better. I remember I got a text from Hank Haney after one of my shows on Sirius XM, and he said, "Larry, if I don't understand what you're talking about, who does?"
Oh,
And he said, "That's why Bob Tosky and John Jacobs were so great, is they spoke in a language that everybody understood." And I know you do this, but sometimes a student will give you a word. It might not be the word we would like to use, but it clicks with them. And you say, okay, you use that word because you know that word connects with them.
yeah, and I'll try to use their word. I'm like, if I,
Right.
make a motion with them and they're like, and I'll say, what was that? And they'll say whatever they say. And then I do my best to say it their way the rest of the lesson, because otherwise they've got to translate it. It's like going from Spanish to English instead of just going directly to their language.
Well, something I wanted to talk to you about tonight was ladies golf and what I see a lot. And here is one of my students, Sherry, who is a nice golfer. She's about a 14 or 15 handicapper. And you see she's got a nice setup, and she makes a good turn on her backswing. She
Yeah, that's
comes into the
beautiful.
ball, but you can just see how her arms kind of go left, and really not a lot of rotation in the arms and hands, and really not a lot of speed here because the club's moving kind of slowly as she's turning through. And then if you look at her here, down the line, you can see she's got the club pretty much on plane, just a hair over, but there's that dreaded chicken wing that nobody likes to see, and that's just basically because the left arm and elbows getting pulled around the chest as she turns through. And I just find that so many ladies, I can throw up, here's another lady, Heidi, that, she's got some good motion, kind of a reverse tilt pivot, but still good motion, athletic, but again, really not the kind of swing you'd want to see. Whereas if you look at a world-class player like my sister Lori, you're going to see when she comes into the ball, those arms and hands are rotating as she goes through. You're going to see this rotation and extension of the arms as she goes through. So why do you think that happens, Kelly? Why do you think so many ladies struggle with learning how to use their arms, hands, and wrist?
Well, first of all, the students that you shared with me, they have beautiful swings. I mean, and their
Yeah,
setups
yeah,
are amazing. So, I mean, and that's always the first start and a key to success. One of the consistent things that I see is that a lot of women are just afraid, first of all, to hit the ground.
right.
This idea of like really sticking the club into the ground to get the ball to go in the air. I spend a lot of time just begging women, you got to hit the ground. You got to hit the
Right,
ground. I actually took some plastic balls and cut them in half and put like the little half. I'm like, you at least got to hit below the equator. So I took
right,
above the equator part out of the equation. So I think the first part of it is they just don't like to hit the ground. So that's going to lead to kind of that some kind of pull back, that kind of hold on. So I think that's a part of it. But I also think that it's a little scary to really swing that club head, to really accelerate the end of the club. You're not controlling the club. You control the setup, but you shouldn't really control the club head when you swing it. Control and swing don't go together. So I feel like women in general have a greater fear of failure, of not wanting to look stupid. If generally on the range, if a woman hits a bad shot, I see her look around to see who's watching her. Sometimes
right,
even if there's just somebody else on the range, or even a ground screw person, they'll be like, oh my gosh, they might see me miss it, versus the more typical men will they hit a shot and they just, blame the bee that flew by and just pull up another ball. So I think it's afraid to hit the ground, a little bit of kind of over control of the club, not really being willing to let it go. And then I also think maybe they've just never had it explained to them that you really need to swing that club head. You need to use your hands and you need to use your wrists, because you can't fake it like a really strong upper body person can. You've got to generate speed with your hands and your arms and your elbows folding and releasing. And if there's tension, that's pretty hard. But I think a lot of times they just need the permission to say, you can use your hands and you can use your wrists. And sometimes they'll hear say, well, I was told not to.
Right.
Well, let's try it this way and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I think, they're trying to turn through the ball so much. And another thing I see a lot is they don't have the club in their fingers when they swing. And so, if we look at, where should the grip be, you can see that we really want to see that grip of the golf club. And I watched your video. You talked about this. You want it on that crease. You want it in your fingers there, right?
Yes.
But we see a lot of, we see it, well, we do, men too, but we see them with a putting grip. It's too much in the palm of the hand here. And you can always see it kind of on the forward swing. So part of it is the grip, getting it in. But, I did this video here recently, and I think it's interesting that if I just swing the club with my right arm, look how far I'm moving the club head with my arm, hand, and wrist.
All right, that's great.
Well, because my left hand isn't on the club, my hips and chest aren't rotating much.
Right.
But the moment I put both hands on the club, the swinging motion of my arms and the rotation of my arms is going to turn my chest, and that momentum is going to bring my hips around. So it's really about getting them to understand the arms and hands, rotate, and we take the club from one side of our body to the other. And I'll see them with perfect swings. Here's a lady that I worked with a lot this summer, and here's just a beautiful release of the arms, hands, and wrists. See that?
Gorgeous. Yep. Beautiful.
The arms, hands rotate, and the hands and wrists recock the club on the other side. I think that's been a good key for a lot of players too, that recock. But boy, you put the ball down there and they don't quite do it as well with the ball there.
Right.
And
Well, I think it's that control thing again. I mean, like, I love to see a lot of students just put it on a tee and take the ground out of this scenario and just, really swing fast. They're afraid to swing fast. Like, I flip the club upside down and have them switch the grip all the time. I like the super speed golf training system.
right.
They learn to generate speed. But, like your own personal version of that is take one of your longer clubs and flip it over and switch the grip.
Right. And you can hear it. You can hear the
the
whip.
swoosh. You're releasing and you're using your hands and arms well.
You can. And if it's just going through as slow as you're turning, you're not going to hear a swoosh.
Right.
It's going to be pretty quiet.
Yeah. And I love doing this show with you because I agree with what you say and it's fun to listen to. And the grip thing is really important.
Yes.
But I think it's another thing that feels a little funny and a little foreign when you really hold the club in the fingers and you really get that kind of heel pad, down on the top of the club.
Right.
It doesn't even feel like you're holding it because you don't have to squeeze it. And then I like to show my students, well, it levers in there on its own. You actually don't have to squeeze. And that's the beauty of it. But it's one of the 5,000 things in golf that are counterintuitive.
Yeah. And if you have the club in the correct place with that heel pad on top, like you're talking about, then the shaft will be parallel to the ground.
Yeah. And what I like to have them do from there is I'll do it and I'll say, okay, pick the club up, and it just comes right out of my hand because it's so secure. You don't have to squeeze. I love this, showing people this. It's very kind of meaningful and eye-opening, but it doesn't mean it's not going to feel funny understanding it.
Oh, totally.
And being able to make the change. But the results will speak for themselves. Discomfort turns to comfort very quickly when that golf ball is happy.
Well, when they hold their hand like this and put the club in it, they just never seem to get it right. You see that, right?
Yeah.
And when I just have let their left arm hang at their side, and one thing about letting the shaft, go lower, or the grip go lower, that makes it easier to get that club in the crease and in the fingers there. And it's more natural doing it that way. Adam Scott would hold the shaft parallel to the ground and put his hand on, and get that left hand grip on.
Yeah, I
But you're
remember
right.
when I
You're
worked
right. The
with Mike
grip is
Adams.
huge.
Yeah,
The grip is
yeah.
huge. You're not going to be able to whip it if you got it too much in your palm. You just can't. It's going to come out of your hands.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I remember when I worked with Mike Adams, that holding the club on the side was one of the things that I learned from him. It makes a big difference, but I think it's finding a way for each golfer that, kind of gets you there. And there's obviously a lot of different ways to do that.
Well, I'll say this: the thing that feel like I've been successful with the ladies is just getting them to make a good turn on the backswing.
Yeah.
And then just having them feel like they swing kind of in to out and rotate their arms and hands. And don't get too much in the weeds as far as all the stuff you and I have studied about what the hands and wrist and the extension and, all the stuff going on. But just have them have a sense they're rotating and you're swinging out to right. One of my students called it swing out sister.
Okay.
I said, yeah, swing out sister, do that.
There you go. Her terminology. That's good.
But I have to say that's been the most successful thing I've done. Grip it in the fingers, make a good turn, and rotate your arms and hands and feel like you're swinging a little bit out to the right. And that's been the one thing. And it's simple. They understand it. We don't have to get too much more into it. And they can start hitting the ball. And as well as I do, if they're coming over the top and swinging 8 or 10 left and you get them swinging more down the line, shoot, they're going to hit it 10, 20 yards further.
Yeah. And I like that thought of kind of feeling like they're swinging out to the right, because obviously, when they make their backswing and they've turned, and that's a great power source for sure, especially for women, we have to do it. But when the shoulders are kind of facing away from the target, they're aiming to the right. So as you let your arm swing down your shoulder line, it's going to feel out to the right. And that's another one of those really counterintuitive things where
Right.
I feel like I'm swinging out to the right to make it go straight. And then as soon as it hits the ball, then it starts going to the left. Naturally,
Right.
that's going. But it's, like the club face is only really looking at the target for 2 frames in a full swing.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. 240 frames per second. Yeah. It's
Right.
kind of one.
Yeah.
4/10,000ths of a second, my friend James Light says.
I believe him.
That's all it is. That's the only time the ball's told what to do, he says.
Well, how long is it again?
4/10,000ths of a second.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good luck with that.
So it's crazy. But I think it's, golf is fun. And I think just allowing people to understand that there is hand-eye coordination and that part of learning how to play this game, you've just got to give yourself a break and understand that it really is hand-eye coordination. And, it's funny, we tee balls up for people. Like you said, the ladies are a little afraid of messing up the garden, and taking a divot. But you put the ball on the tee and it's amazing. They can hit a great shot and then off the ground. I think Bob Ford said something great about this. He said, well, they're trying to lift it.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, wow, I never thought of it that way.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly
They're
what
trying, that in their mind, they're trying to lift it. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. That's why the elbows pull in.
Yeah. I like to put a forward tee on the ground in front of the ball and ask them, once they got to get the club down first. But I think once they get the club down and then understanding that it should stay on the ground after the ball is like, what do you mean? Or I'll even pull up high-speed video of an iron shot of the club going down the back of the ball and then slamming into the ground. That's big news to even good golfers. And then I wanted to comment on hand-eye coordination. So I think it's nice. It's certainly helpful. So having played other sports is
right.
great.
Totally.
But if you put a golfer here, let me give some optimism here. If for those who aren't as coordinated as others, if you're in a good posture and your grip is good, that little golf ball is going to try to get in the way. So if you're not particularly sporty or not particularly coordinated, I've seen not so coordinated people become really good golfers, but just have to be impeccable setups.
No, I agree. You have to set up for success. We see setups that it's going to be hard, even for a good player, to do what they want to do with the club at impact. But I totally agree. And, that's one of the things I love about Right Balance is we can measure people. We know what stance widths they should be in, and your stance width affects where your weight is in your feet, and your posture changes whether you're a low, mid, or upper core player. So getting the correct posture, your pivot changes based on if you're low, mid, or upper core. And so, there's more than one way to do it, and the models match up. So
Amazing stuff. He does a great job. It's a wonderful program.
yeah, and it makes my life easy because once I know if they're upper, mid, or low core, then I know, okay, if they're upper core, they better be turning and not swaying. And if they're low core, well, they better be moving to that right foot. They better
Right.
be making a lateral motion in the backswing. And so, but an upper core player making a lateral move isn't going to work, and a low core player pivoting around their front leg isn't going to work for them either. So it's these pieces of the puzzle, and that's what my new book really is about is trying everything, working with all these top teachers, trying to figure out how my swing worked. And it really wasn't until I met Doc Wright. I was getting there. Mike Adams had a great thing about, if you have slow hips, which I have, don't try and speed them up. Well, that's what I was trying to do.
Right.
And all of a sudden I got the pieces of the puzzle with Doc Wright. There was a swing called the upper core swing. And what's crazy is I've measured 900 people now, and 90% of them in upper core. Now I've written a book on it and talked about it a lot on my radio show. So people are emailing me, I know I'm upper core, I'm coming to see you. So, but we still believe most of us are upper core, and it's been fascinating. And at the end of the day, like we talked about earlier in the show, it's really about simple things. The upper core swing, you just turn and then you let your arms rotate and swing the club past your body and let it kind of pull you through. It's not rocket science,
Well, and that's really interesting because you think about one of the things that people will come to me all the time with, I need to kind of like separate on the downswing and I need to do with my hips. And so, and that one, as you're saying, 90% of your students are measuring upper core, that would make them worse. And I'll say to them, listen,
Right.
I can't even do that. Not that I think that I should, but I've been playing since I was 3 and I can't do it. So I don't think you should try, but it's, and I think that's the challenge of sometimes when you're reading instruction or you're watching videos, you need to make sure that you have a voice that applies to what you are doing.
No, you do. And I think the hard part is filtering it, because you see a 1-page thing in Golf Digest, or you watch a video on YouTube, or, you see this stuff and you think, hey, we're very gullible. We're going to go try. If we're hitting it poorly, we're going to go try anything. Right. So, but it could be the wrong thing for you.
Absolutely.
It could be the wrong thing for you. And what I found out is I was trying to lag and rotate. That's low core. That's Dustin Johnson, a really strong grip and really rotated impact.
Right.
Well, you could hold a gun to my head. I can't be rotated at impact hitting a golf ball. So
I think golfers, if you try something and it doesn't work right away, stop.
I like that. I remember asking Mike Malaska, because I'd heard this about Nicholas. And I said, I heard Jack say, if something doesn't work after 2 or 3 days, it's not going to work. And he told a story about doing a clinic with Jack with a couple thousand people. And somebody asked him a question. He said, well, that question, he goes, well, it might take you a month, might take you this long. And then Jack shows up and somebody says, so Jack, when you make changes, how long does it take for you to trust it and have it work in competition? He goes, a couple days.
That's if it's meant to work, it'll work pretty quickly. I play a lot of tennis, and
I totally agree with that. And God knows how many times I hit these big buckets of balls, and I'd go out and play 5 holes and say that formula doesn't work. That's not the correct thing for me. So, it's kind of crazy all the stuff we tried. Now, I learned a lot from all the great teachers I worked with through the years, and it's helping me now when I teach, but it's pretty darn crazy. Well, Kellie, it's been great having you on the show. Anybody that would like to get in touch with Kellie, you can go to her website, kelliestenzelgolf.com. And she's down at the Palm Beach Country Club and the Boca Hotel. now. She's back in season here in Florida. And Kellie, it's always great to have you on the show. I've had you on my Sirius XM show, and I'd just like to thank my sponsors real quick: Titleist FootJoy, the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club Orlando, and the Red Sky Golf Club in Orlando, Florida. Well, Kellie, you have a great season, and always great to catch up with you.
Thanks. It's always a pleasure. You do a great job, and I love talking golf with you. So thank you for having me. I really appreciated it.
Okay, thanks. Well, we're on Thursday, 7:30 to 8 on Facebook Live. Till next weekend, keep swinging.